Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where I managed to get one of the contracts to the place where it's supposed to be at this point. The other one bugged and decided that we hadn't accepted it yet. And I'm not entirely sure why that's happening. In fact, it is no longer showing up here. That's exciting. Let's hop on back real quick. Let's go into here, and let's see if we can refresh it to get it to show up again. Okay, this is it here. So we can accept this, but I'm going to wait to do that. We're going to have to do this a little bit separately. Apparently it doesn't like the fact that we did 2 in 1. I guess that's what we've got going on here. So we need to resume this flight and we need to deorbit this, and then we'll need to get the other one set up correctly, right? That's the way that this is working. So we're going to bring our periapsis on down. And this is the actual completion of the contract. The next one is just going to be preparing to quote-unquote complete it again, but we're not actually going to be doing that. We're going to have to do some weirdness. I don't love it, but the Spaceport Esperanza has been bugged since we started. So that's understood. Okay, that's good enough. We're going to end that flight, and we're going to destroy the craft. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build here, and we're going to grab this guy only. Put it in the center here, because the game thinks that we haven't put this up yet, but we actually have. So I'm going to put this out on the pad, like so. It has 1 or more issues and cannot be launched. What is this? 1 payload, but no payloads from contracts available. What? Oh, we didn't accept this contract, did we? We need to accept that contract. There we go. Now we can put this together. Yeah, like that. So we put this out on the pad, right? And at this point, we need to make a save. So we're going to do exactly that, save and exit, and now I have to stop the game, make this contract be complete, recover this, and then we should be where we should be. So I'll be right back. Okay, so in theory, if we resume this flight, we should complete the contract. Yes, I just heard it. Okay, so we end that flight. We're going to recover this craft, and that should be good. Now, if we check the Spaceport Esperanza, we can see the solar array is attached to it, so that looks excellent. And now we can hop into our career here, and we've got a couple more station parts here. So we've got the Space Lab and the Fuel Depot Core. So both of these are 100 million. That is understood. Do we want to try to do both at once? Well, that's definitely an interesting question. I'm going to accept both. We know that we just had issues with it, right? But I want to get those done, and that is getting us tech points. So we do need to get some tech points here, but we might be able to get more contracts available if we did some work here. So let's check through here real quick. I don't think that there's anything that would give us more contracts in this tier, if I recall correctly. I think we need to be in this tier, which we need a little bit more for. But let's just check here. No contracts here, no contracts here, no contracts here. Okay, so it's definitely out in this tier. And what do we need here? None of those were contracts. None of these are contracts. None of those are contracts. Okay, so out over here, RTGs, yeah. Those are not contracts. This one. Okay, so engineering masterpiece is what we need. So that's a long ways to go. We would have to get modern engineer, finesse, and then engineering masterpiece. So that's understood. For now, we should probably be working on our space station. So that'll have to do for now. So we need to get rid of this guy for sure. And then we need to take a look. Do we want to do these in single launches? If we do, we'll be losing money. Or do we want to combine these together? That's going to be really interesting for sure. 352 tons for the fuel depot. The science module isn't all that expensive. The fuel depot, on the other hand, and yeah, you can see we can't actually connect this here. So that is understood. I think we're going to have to do these in single launches. And we probably are just going to accept the fact that the cost on this is going to be high. I think that's what we're going to do. So we're going to need to put our fairing on here. This is going to have to be quite a lot higher in the fairing, of course. And I think that we should probably put a strut here, just to give ourselves a little bit of space. So a strut would go here, and then we would have that be about that long or so. And then, of course, the fairing is going to have to be a fair amount taller. Like that. Now, what's our thrust to weight? Well, it's pretty low. I don't know if we're going to be able to launch this as is. This is a very big, very heavy payload. Okay, so let's put this out on the launch pad. As you can see, we're going to be losing money for 100 million here. But I think we got to try it. We could think about how we want to do this. We are definitely going to be losing money with this payload, though. This is not great. So if we were to put this at a 60-degree heading, I don't know if this timing is probably terribly wrong. We should go straight up, to be honest. Turn off that monoprop. And let's see how this goes. Our thrust to weight is going to be, yeah, 1.08. Incredibly, incredibly low thrust to weight here. I mean, we're getting going, but I highly doubt that this is going to be a thing. So we've launched with the fuel depot core. We're only doing this one for now. I would like to have the space lab in there too, but it's way too wide. I don't see a way that we can effectively do that. So the thrust to weight is going up. We have burned a lot of our fuel already. We're down to about 2/3 fuel in these boosters. So that's definitely, we're moving very slowly, right? There's no doubt about it. We are moving incredibly, incredibly slowly right now. Apoapsis of about 4 kilometers. If there's a way to combine these together, that would give us a lot more headroom in terms of our money. But even then, it would be only about 50 million. I don't think this is powerful enough to lift this. We are up to about 2 thrust to weight now. So we're getting some amount of speed built up, but this is going to be very, very, very difficult to do. We can move this over to around a 45-ish degree heading and start building up some amount of lateral speed, but it's grim. It's very, very grim. So this is going to require some definite design work, I think. There are a couple of things that we can do to boost the power of this, and we may end up having to do both. The main constraint is going to be financial. Okay, let's ditch these side cores. There we go. And we can see our thrust to weight is currently 0.73. So 0.73 thrust to weight is not phenomenal. And we can see our apoapsis is quite low. We are quite slow at this time, only moving at about 1 kilometer per second in orbital velocity. And I'm looking at how much DV we have in this stage. This is not enough to propel this guy up into orbit. That's for sure. What's our thrust to weight going to look like when we ditch our fairing, though? That's an interesting question here. So let's ditch the fairing right about now. Yeah. So this is all monoprop up in this. That's noted. Okay, so that means that there's a couple things that we can do. We can pull this back. Obviously, we're going to need more thrust in this. And we can pull that back right now. We can drop this monoprop tech. So this doesn't need to happen. We can get rid of that. That'll save us some weight. That's great. But I also want to launch the science lab simultaneously. What would that look like? Obviously, we don't want to position this here. But if we were to launch this, like, out over here, right? And then we were to duplicate this guy and put him out over here. Or actually, we would just mirror this. So I would set the position to be... Set that X position to be 0. Like that. Actually, that's not what we're looking at. We'd be looking at this to be about -2, weirdly. Okay. And then we would set this to be mirrored. Specifically, radially. And then we would connect this guy in here, right? But this isn't actually going to work. So we would need to have this be put in, like, right out over here. I'm just putting it there temporarily. And then we would have... I'm wondering how much we're going to have in terms of... In terms of space. I don't think it's going to be much. So we're going to put the science module about here. The science module is considerably smaller. Okay. Noted. They're both large docking port. So that'll make things somewhat easier. Emphasis on somewhat. So I would like to move this guy out this way a little ways and this guy out this way a little ways. We're still clipping together, right? So I kind of want to increase our fairing radius up to 3 meters. And then put this guy here and this guy about here. So there's just a little bit of space between them. This is going to be very, very, very off-kilter in terms of mass. And I don't know how big of a problem that's going to be. So for right now, I want to upgrade all of this in the center up to 3 meters. And that, of course, means that we're going to have to come in here and detach these guys, right? They're going to have to come out over here. I don't know what's going on with this. What is actually happening here? Hang on. What is happening here? What is the root part here? Why does this exist? We can't detach anything over here? We can duplicate that. Wild. I do not know what's happening here. Regardless, we're going to move this up to a 3 meter radius as well. I want to get zoomed in a little bit here so that we can hopefully hit that precise 3 meter radius. And this up here should be 3 as well. There we go. So we're down to, or rather up to a 3 meter radius. This down here is not expanded up to that just yet. So that would be about there. That would allow us to increase our engines here, and we'll get to that. But I'm really wondering what we've got going on with this. We might have to rebuild this. I can't actually detach it, but I can duplicate these parts, like so. And then we can recreate it. So that would be out over here. Kind of like that, right? And then we would get rid of this in its entirety. So we delete that. That's fine. And then we would put this guy in. Well, it's doing this again. Okay, let's do it like this. So we're going to get rid of this part. I'm going to attach these out here at a 270-degree angle for now. Let's put these together like this. And then we can have... Yeah, we can't detach that now. I have no idea what's going on with that. But if we attach that right here, hypothetically, now we can detach it. Okay, beautiful. So from there, I would look to extend this tank up to about here. And this is going to wreck our thrust to weight a little bit. And then we put that about there. And then I put in another tank down here, with the idea being that this is going to, like, scale down. Okay. And then we put in something like this. So this tank would... not like that. Hang on. Undo. There we go. This would scale down to be something kind of like that. Okay. So it'd be like this, right? Then these guys would go here at like a 180-degree angle. Is that duplicated? It is not. So we're going to need to turn on radial symmetry. There we go. And then this guy, we would need to turn on radial X6. Now, this is going to have negative thrust to weight. You can see 0.82, and that is deeply, deeply unsurprising. I'm going to move these engines out to here. And you can see this current price is 92.2 million. It's very similar to our previous price. But if we were to do this and this, that's going to move us up to 122.9 million. This is actually a viable price. This thrust to weight is 1.09. So we could definitely work on getting additional thrust out of this. We're going to need to put in our fairing here. The fairing is going to need to be a lot wider than this. It's going to need to be like at least a 4.5 meter fairing, perhaps even a 5 meter fairing. We'll do 5.07 for now, and let's see what that feels like. It's going to need to be like a 6 meter fairing. Okay, that's absurd. And our current staging here, let's see what we've got here. So we're going to need our payloads to go up this way for sure. And then we've got our interstage, our engines, our fairing base here. That looks good. Interstages and engines here. Okay, so that is all fine. 25 engines? Is that correct? Maybe. That actually might be correct, now that I look at this. Shouldn't it be 24? Multiples of 6? But then there's also this one in the center. That's where we get the 5. Okay. So we currently allegedly have a starting thrust to weight in stage 1 of just over 1, which is kind of surprising, actually. I'm rather surprised that that's the case. But we could strap on outside of here some SRBs. And that's probably going to what's going to end up happening. This is going to be kind of a Franken rocket. But we could put in a fuel tank out over here, and then we put in a hemisphere up on top of that, right? And then we would extend these down to, I don't know, about here or so. And then we would run a bunch of hopefully fairly small and cheap Ifrits. So that would bring us up to 140. We're pushing the boundary at this point. I don't know what the burn time on these would be. But we could definitely bring this down to about here or so. And then have these Ifrits link in here. So these are currently nozzle throat sizes of 75%. I want to maximize their thrust. The nozzle length is kind of irrelevant here, but we can drop down the size of them until such a time as 1.5 is non-terrible, actually. So these would be takeoff assists, right? And we can see what that ends up feeling like. We're going to need to do our staging here. So we're going to hop in here. This is going to be firing all of these, but the interstages here, these need to go in about here. These are definitely going to fall off before these fuel tanks do. Okay, now one thing I'm questioning right now. Do these allow fuel crossfeed? They do. Okay, these do not. That's okay. These are SRBs. Okay, so this is 138.4 million, and if we put this out on the launch pad, that's going to cost 78.4 million to launch from the DSC launch pad. So that is, on its own, slightly negative in terms of the overall price of this. We'd like to find ways to do cost savings here, but I'm not sure how many of those there are. For right now, let's put this out on the pad and just see if we can get it into orbit. That's question number 1. If we can get it into orbit, great. Then we can start thinking about maybe some cost savings for this. So something like that, throttle up, and we would fire up all of these engines immediately. We're going can also turn our monoprop off. There we go. So that'll accelerate us up for a little bit until these SRBs burn out, right? That'll give us a little bit of assistance on takeoff. But what is our thrust to weight going to look like once these SRBs cease to burn? I'm guessing it's not going to look great. Now we can definitely make these SRBs a lot longer burning. That's a theoretical option. Actually, that's not so bad. Thrust to weight is 1.4 at this point. Those SRBs added a lot, actually. And they added some cost, which is, you know, not ideal. We may want to go, instead of doing Ifrits, we may want to do model rocket engines for cost purposes. We'll see what that ends up looking like. So we're up to 350 meters per second here, and we currently have about 50% fuel left in these side boosters. I want to make sure we're not pulling fuel. We are pulling fuel from the center tank. We're not supposed to be pulling fuel from the center tank. Why is this happening? Okay, that's not phenomenal. Mage engines are taking heat damage. Okay, this is probably because of the nozzle expansion here. That's understood. Yeah. Okay, so let's pull that back, and that is absolutely fine. That's good to know, and that means that we need to pull this down or these up a little bit. But I think the easiest way to do it is going to be to pull these engines off and then bring this guy down a little bit to about there or so. Yeah, that should be decent. And then we put these guys back on, and we need to have them, of course, be in Radial X6 mode. And I want to just tweak that positioning a little bit. This would be Radial X6 here, and then we'd have the same thing right about here at Radial X6, like that. So that should fix that overheat issue. Now, we can definitely make these SRBs burn longer by bringing these up. I don't know that we want to bring them up that high. Maybe around here. I'm not sure what that'll do to our thrust to weight. 1.42, that's actually not too bad. I do want to drop these Ifrits. They are somewhat expensive, and I want to see if we can maybe get some goblins on here that would do the trick. So we would put in teeny tiny little goblins here. We would want to max out the size of these, and it would be something like this, right? So this is 0.96. Obviously, that's not great. So we would clone this and put it in symmetry mode. Symmetry mode. Oh, right, we can't do that because it's already cloned. We can detach it here, and then we can't do it that way either. We're going to have to do this manually. Ooh, I don't like that. Okay, well, this is for cost savings. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that brings us up to 6 there. That puts our starting thrust to weight at 0.98, which is, you know, not fantastic. Each of these are not really budging that thrust to weight. So that's noted. But we can definitely just make our way through here and do something like this. We're now up to 1.02. So that's making some progress anyway. And then I'll just do a quick circle out over here, something kind of like this. And the costs are definitely lower than running that Ifrit engine. Thrust to weight is also quite a lot lower, but that might be okay. So it would end up being something kind of like that. 1.07 for the thrust to weight. I mean, we can definitely sneak in another engine or two here and there. So this is 1.07. This would barely get off the ground, but it's going to burn for quite a long time. We can definitely lower these, but that would be a lot of work at this point. I don't know that we want to do that. We probably do, actually. The way I'm going to go about lowering this is I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to move it. No, not like that. Why would you move that way? Don't do that. Okay. Grab this. Move it down. There you go. Now we can grab these off of here, and we can move this up. There. Problem solved. Okay, so 1.06 is not a fantastic thrust to weight. There's no doubt about that. We could, however, duplicate these. That didn't duplicate the whole stack. Interesting. Why didn't that duplicate the whole stack? Because this is inheriting symmetry. Yeah, I don't like the way that inheriting symmetry in this game works. It's not amazing, to be honest. Well, we would be able to theoretically launch this thing. This is a cost savings of about 10 million. So, I mean, our launch pad fee went up by about 10 million. And that's because our weight went up. Okay. Well, in that case, I guess there's no real point in having all of these engines here. And we may as well just run Ifrits. And we may as well just be like, you know what? We're probably going to take a loss. The other thing we could do is reduce our number of engines here and increase the size of them. And that's probably a smart thing to do. So that will probably save us a fair amount of cost as well. For the time being, I want to get rid of all of these and go back to Ifrits for the time being. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Undo that, please. Undo that, please. Thank you. Okay. So one thing we could also do is we could remove a good chunk of these engines. That's where the majority of our cost is. And I'm wondering, what if we just took these engines here? And we're going to want them to be at roughly the same height, right? But what if we just took these engines here and we had a certain number of those? I don't know what number that would be just yet. It would be maybe like 4-ish. So something kind of like that. That's 1.02 thrust to weight. We're going to make some changes over here and put Ifrits back in. So that might be a very, very, very viable way to do this. That does save some amount of money, like a couple million, and hopefully a decent amount of weight as well. But a lot of the weight is coming from adding in the SRBs, right? So a lot of that weight, it just kind of is what it is if we need the thrust, which we do as of right now. So let's get rid of all of this. There we go. And let's just put those Ifrits back in for the moment, like so. And we would do the nozzle throat size of 100. And then the actual size of this, we would tune down to be about 1.3, 1.4 even, maybe like 1.5. That'll do. So something like this would be the idea. And then we would grab here, and we need to be in this part. We grab these and just move them up to be about like that. Now, this is 140 million, and our launch cost would be 80 million. So this is still losing 20 million, even combining these together. This is a very chintzy amount of money for this amount of mass. Particularly the fuel bay. We might just have to accept a loss. For now, though, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we are going to give this a test. We can also increase our number of SRBs if we really feel like we need to, but cost is a major concern at this point, and I'm not entirely sure how we want to do that. We'll see. For now, it's time to put a cut in. I'm going to do that. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Andy Magar, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Hiro Marutsu, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time. And we might be able to reduce our wet mass here through some form of determining that we have too much DV at some stages. We'll see.